What's going on, everybody? It is still running back week over here at Team Fantasy Life, and accordingly, we're going through some of our favorite sleepers, breakouts, and potential values outside of the Big 12 at the position. And of course, I cannot accomplish this alone, so joining me today, Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. And Dwain, wanted to start things off hot with someone who I know has had your mind in a freaking pretzel, man, trying to figure out these projections. What do we make about Alvin Kamara, a guy who has posted back-to-back top 5 finishes in PPR points per game, not being priced even close to that because, yes, he is old. Yes, we don't exactly expect the Saints offense to be well, but man, this dude's going to touch the ball a lot. Is that not enough for us to get some Alvin Kamara in the year 2025, Dwayne?
Well, look, I mean, the thing with Alvin Kamara is, to your point, like, I don't think there's a lot of touch competition here. Kendre Miller is obviously still on the roster, hasn't been able to stay healthy. Then Devin Neal was really a late round pick. I know that's going to really piss Thor Nystrom off. Like, he's going to tell us that Rock Chalk Jayhawk Devin Neal is going to take over the backfield in New Orleans. And maybe so, but typically you would spend a higher draft pick on a player that you thought was going to do that for your franchise. So I do think there's a lot of positives for Kamara from a standpoint of, like, it's like we can't really project someone just to come in and take away this workload from him. Like, you kind of got to think he's going to be the guy to start the season. I think the big question, though, is as the season goes on, do they continue to feed Kamara? Because I think there's a lot of potential for this Saints offense, Ian, to be just one of the worst in the league. I only have five different offenses projected for less than 215 passing yards per game and 1.2 passing touchdowns or less per game. The Saints are one of those, and I honestly might be being generous. I mean, before, at least, we did have Derek Carr. We weren't saying he was a world beater. Yeah, Ian got blocked by him on Twitter, but I think even Ian will tell you, like, that's an average to above average, below average, somewhere in the middle, right? Quarterback from an NFL standard standpoint. And we had seen Derek Carr actually, really be at the, at least drive like some of these offenses that could help other players on the offense produce, even though he might not have been like a top 12 or top 10 asset at his position. We saw him able to support running backs and wide receivers multiple different seasons. That's a big question now. With Tyler Shuck, I mean, it's like, what are we ultimately going to get? I mean, we're getting a quarterback that's going to be 26, 7 years old, played 7 years in college, never really even had a standout year. He is a true projection based on some film truthers that do think he has what it takes, and maybe they'll be right. But I mean, historically, Ian, this is not a good kind of profile for a quarterback. I would say this, analytically speaking, it would be an outlier kind of season for the Saints to suddenly have this good offense. And that's what worries me the most. I mean, I get it. Their offense hasn't been great over the last couple of seasons either, but this could be really bad. This could be the worst in the league bad. I do believe the Saints have the longest odds in the NFL right now to win the Super Bowl. So I think bad offense to start the year. Probably Alvin Kamara overcomes it with volume. My concern is once you get to the middle of the year and you're in the late part of your year trying to win your fantasy championship, then what is Alvin Kamara going to actually be worth?
Obviously, re-up with a 2-year, $24.5 million extension last October. So again, plenty of millions of reasons why Kamara and the Saints should be willing to feed him that rock. Last year did not have him going into fantasy playoffs. That was because of a pulled groin in week 15. We'll give him credit, though, has played at least 13 games in all 8 seasons of his career. So again, there's a reason why people are not exactly falling, over themselves trying to draft Kamara, everything that Dwayne just explained. But accordingly, Dwayne, in early drafts, he's going to RB20 right now. Again, back-to-back top 5 finishes. I don't believe he's ever finished as RB13 in a season. Now, he's also never had as bad of an offensive environment. But man, round 6, Alvin Kamara. Again, I agree with you. I'm not going to be entering every single draft this summer saying, oh my God, I'm going to go around ahead trying to get this guy. But I know you like to dip your toes in those zero RB waters. I mean, is this not the sort of guy we should be looking for as our RB1 or RB2 once we do get to round 6?
Well, I think he's definitely a guy you can mix in, and then your draft strategy can also, you can also take into account that you have concerns about Kamara down the stretch, right? This is also a player that's going to be 30 years old whenever the season starts. But, to your point, if the Saints come out in the first 3 or 4 games, the NFL hasn't figured out exactly what their offense is all about. Like, we've got Kellen Moore. He's shown to be a competent play caller in his history. Like, we could have the Saints get off to this really hot start, and Alvin Kamara could be part of, right, what your rotation is going to be at running back for the season. And maybe early in the year it's him, and then later in the year it's one of these other backs that you take later. Maybe it's a handcuff, contingent upside type player. Maybe it's one of these rookies we're going to talk about here in a little bit later, that are going into in round 5, 6, and 7. Maybe they start off a little bit slow. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can think about Alvin Kamara. I would definitely, though, if I'm taking him, especially in a best ball format, I would be kind of planning on him not being worth a lot for me when I'm trying to win the millions of dollars right at the end of the season. I mean, that's the way I would be thinking about it. You would be happy and you would be surprised if it turned out otherwise. And that's definitely in the range of outcomes because just weird things happen. Maybe Tyler Shuck's going to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. I can't say for sure, Ian. Like, he could come out and actually, we could be like, wow, this offense is better than Derek Carr. Like, that's in the range of outcomes, not just the one I'm betting on. So I would say the biggest thing to think about with Kamara is, yes, he is one of these players that's viable. You can be adding him to your teams, but make sure you're thinking about your roster construction and the mix of the running backs that you have. I would certainly be thinking about some other guys that I would want to be kind of taking that baton, that handoff from Kamara around midseason, and then they're starting to turn into the guys that you're depending on to win the fantasy championship.
Devil's advocate, maybe they are a train wreck the first 2 months, but then maybe they start, underdog story, putting things together there down the stretch. Again, it could go either way. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm just happy, though, we're not saying, look, Kamara's in the Saquon Barkley role, Dwayne, because, again, it seems like that's what we freaking do with half of these.
He projects, look, dude. He projects as the running back 14. We're obviously ranking him lower than that because of what could happen later in the year. But like, if you just go pure projections, and I mean, you know me, like I try to keep, when I'm projecting, I'm really trying to project medians. I'm really letting our variance, ceiling, and floor logic handle the rest. And on Kamara, I mean, even though it's like I was probably below the median. I was probably pretty stingy with the way that I project. I'm not going to say probably. I know I was pretty stingy with the way that I projected him. And he still came out as the running back 14 in half PPR, and that's well below where he's going right now.
Full PPR, really, really tough for running backs who catch as many passes as Kamara to bust, but he's going to need each and every single one of those to, again, make it in a pretty putrid-looking offensive environment down there in New Orleans. But moving right along, Dwayne, some more running backs that are, again, actually sitting closer to that RB1 borderline. We got James Cook, Kenneth Walker, and Chuba Hubbard. Last year finished as RB11, RB12, and RB13. So out of those three, Dwayne, who would you be most willing to put a chip on as finishing as the best running back in fantasy land ahead of 2025?
Jesus, these questions, man. Like it's look, they're really close in our projections. Okay. I mean, if you look at their half PPR projections, I've got Chuba Hubbard projected for 13.1 fantasy points per game. I've got James Cook at 13. They're literally separated by 0.1. And then I've got Kenneth Walker right there in the same zip code at 12.3 fantasy points per game. If you look at their ADP though, Ian, it's kind of interesting. The market has decided that James Cook is worth way more than the other two. He goes at pick 41 right now on Underdog, so he is a round 4 pick, and he's just recently fell into round 4. I think part of that is because the potential of a holdout for him. There's some concern there. I think also people have finally kind of got their head around the idea that, look, he's not going to come out and score 16, 18 rushing touchdowns again. It's just not going to happen. Even if he were to get more work inside the 5-yard line, that number's likely to go down. So it's probably some combination of those two things. He's sliding a little bit, but still, pick 41 versus Hubbard is pick 57 right now in Underdog. That's in round 5, and then Kenneth Walker's going 1 pick after him at pick 58. And obviously both of those guys have their own concern. Hubbard is probably, okay, can the Panthers offense finally get going? Is what we saw towards the end of last year, like, is that kind of the sign of the times and we're going to be this better offense, in 2025? Or was it really what we saw for most of the 2024 season, which is really something we didn't like much in fantasy? And then for Kenneth Walker, it really comes down to, we've got a new OC in town. You've got the situation with Zach Charbonnet also having that second round draft capital. And when Zach Charbonnet has had to fill in for Kenneth Walker, let's face it, like, he's been good as well. So Kenneth Walker, out of all these guys, probably has the most competition for touches from Charbonnet, right? But he's also in an offense that, like, if everything were to click, we feel pretty good about. So I know I said a lot of different things there. Projections say these guys are all really close. ADP, folks are leaning towards Cook. If I had to choose between these three, and I only got to do one fantasy draft, Ian, it would be Kenneth Walker. I would go with Walker just because I do believe, like, of these three players, I think he's the most talented. Like, he is the one that I think we know he's not like great on passing downs, but he showed last year that he can get out there. He can be on the field in the 2-minute offense. Like, he is the guy that has that special skill set, in my opinion, that if everything did click right for him, right, he could run for 1,600 yards, right? He could run for 1,700 yards. Like, I struggle like to see that scenario for some of these other guys. So if I had to choose everything, put together, I would say it's Kenneth Walker, but very interested in what your thoughts are.
The only thing that gets me and trips me up with Walker, I know he's been banged up. Last year, he had abdomen, calf, and ankle injuries alone.
Yeah.
He keeps having these hernia, sort of issues, kind of going on. So hopefully, injury God just give us a break here. But you look at these past 2 years, and it's not as small of a sample size now with Charbonnet filling in as much. And other than missed tackles forced per carry, which Walker remains, one of the most elite running backs in the league, Charles been better all the way around. And when I look at this group, I don't expect Ray Davis to overtake James Cook. I don't expect Rico Dowdle to do anything about Chuba Hubbard's workload. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks, unfortunately, will be missing this season. We do have an offensive coordinator change going on in Seattle, Clint Kubiak coming over from the New Orleans Saints. I mean, doesn't Walker, in your opinion, have the toughest, competition in the form of Charbonnet? Because I hear you. If we said, all right, who has the highest best case overall ceiling? I think it's Walker, because on the one hand, he could take over. We saw him catch the passes, and he does have that, 50-plus yard touchdown ability when he can get going. But, man, I do think Charbonnet is that potential, thorn in his side that I don't quite see the same in Carolina or Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said. You have the most competition with Charbonnet, like that, easily, hands down. But I do think that Kenneth Walker of all these guys is the best player, and they're all really close. So, I mean, that's what causes me to lean to him. But I think there's a reason these guys are all, despite the fact that Cook is going earlier than the other two, there's a reason that him and Chuba Hubbard are really that close together. I think people do have fears around Chuba Hubbard of him being that true dead zone back of like, oh man, he's just a guy we have projected for volume, but is it really going to hold up? Whenever I look at the rest of the depth chart with Rico Dowdle, didn't really spend a draft pick until later in the draft. They did go get Travis Etienne's little brother, Trevor Etienne. So it's not like they did a ton to the backfield. Jonathan Brooks is not going to be playing football, unfortunately, this season. So I agree with you that the challenge for touches, right, is going to be lower in Carolina. So I don't blame anybody if they want to go with Chuba Hubbard. I just think like if I try to put myself into like, okay, like if I was starting an actual NFL team today and Chuba Hubbard and Zach Charbonnet were both, or not Zach Charbonnet, but Kenneth Walker were on the board, and like I'm taking Kenneth Walker. Like I do think he's the better player. But again, we're playing fantasy, and we're trying to put all these different things together to ultimately come up with who we're going to want to take more in fantasy. So I think they're really close. I still lean to Kenneth Walker, but like you said, yes, I do agree that he has the most. He's the most at risk for losing touches. There is a scenario where they decide they like Zach Charbonnet better than Kenneth Walker. Like we can't say that it's completely out the door. Like that's not happening to Chuba Hubbard, in my opinion. Like, I don't think there's any way they come in and all of a sudden Rico Dowdle overtakes him after the contract they gave to Chuba Hubbard last year. So I do feel like he's more insulated.
And that is why ultimately I would lean Chuba in this conversation, because again, with Walker, I want to trust my eyes, all right? I'm not trying to be this nerd that's just looking at all these advanced stats and stuff, but I just don't love seeing Kenneth Walker average 3.7 freaking yards per carry last year. His explosive run rate was really bad. Wasn't getting many yards after contact, and I know the Seahawks offensive line wasn't good, but I do think it matters when we look, like for example, in the Bears last year, okay, really bad offensive environment. DeAndre Swift had really bad numbers. So did Roschon Johnson. So did anyone else touching the ball there. I don't love when in the exact same system we see Charbonnet consistently, now for 2 years, be putting up better numbers than Walker. But again, I do see it. He's got the big playability. But again, I guess the reason why I brought those advanced stats to I know you've been, just looking year over year, what actually matters when evaluating running backs, because we saw Josh Jacobs, Saquon, Henry have really bad advanced numbers, better offense. Guess what? Now the advanced numbers.
Yeah.
The one feather in Walker's cap has always been the missed tackles force, and that's what you see when you watch it. Even when he's getting 0 yards, it seems like he's making 2 guys miss before he does it. Do you think the missed tackles number is actually something that we can rely on a bit more year over year, then yards after contact, then raw yards per carry, then explosive plays?
Yards after contact and missed tackles force are both like the two sticky underlying metrics as far as like the things we think the running backs own the most year over year. The problem with it is that we have also seen for years and years and years guys that have actual better efficiency in those numbers. It doesn't mean they get more touches the next season. So we just have, and we've talked about some other ones like Jalen Warren versus Najee Harris, right? That's a recent one that's in everybody's mind. But this is a tale as old as time. We could keep going back year after year after year of these guys that we think should be getting the touches just because they're more efficient. And most often they just don't, Ian. Like, so there's something else going on with the coaches beyond these numbers as to how they're determining which guys they really want to keep on the field more than the others. But yes, to your point around the missed tackles force, it is a very sticky one. Yards after contact, very sticky. Explosive rushing attempts, not as sticky as the other two, but it's still something you like to see because we want that opportunity, for the back to just take it to the house from anywhere. It's just like another, we always say, we use the term out, right? We want as many outs as we possibly can. Like, okay, can they catch passes? Yes, that's an out. Can they break a long run for a touchdown? Yes, that's an out. Do they get the carries inside the 5-yard line? Then yes, that's another out. So those are all things that we want. But ultimately, when we talk about efficiency and how it correlates to future touches, it just doesn't always work out. And so that's the one thing. Like, to your point, Charbonnet technically has been better, even better than Kenneth Walker in a few different areas. But will it mean more touches? We don't know.
Good news is, even though you mentioned James Cook going round 4, I mean, we're still able to get Chuba and Kenneth Walker, towards the end of round 5 in some of these earlier best ball drafts going on. So not exactly backs you need to break the bank for. Hey, maybe you find a way to add both of them to the squad if you are picking at the turn. 2 more running backs who, again, I do think we can talk ourselves into having quality seasons who are not going to cost you all that much in fantasy land. James Conner and David Montgomery, 2 guys who just really in Detroit and Arizona, I ran the numbers, guys. These guys have both literally beat their ADP in Conner's case 4 years running, in D-Mont's case the last 2 years, calling the Tyler Lockett's of running backs, if you want to do that. So again, Conner versus Montgomery. Dwayne, are you buying them at their low-end RB2 price point, or are you a little bit too worried, again, about the split touches for D-Mont and obviously the age concern for Conner?
Yeah, I think they're good bets. Like especially if you're starting off heavy, right, at wide receiver. If you've already got 3 running backs on your team by the time you get to this group of running backs, then I'm probably not drafting them onto my roster. But if you did start off with 1 running back, like in the first 3 or 4 rounds, or 0 running backs in the first 3 or 4 rounds, I think these are absolute targets for you in fantasy. You kind of mentioned it, Ian, with James Conner, like the bet that you've got on him is him really remaining the lead back, despite the fact that he's going to be 30 pretty much whenever this season starts. And then you have to think about this offense. It's kind of been a middling offense, not one that's really, it's kind of stuck in neutral, right? It's not a bad offense. It's not a good offense, but we haven't really seen it be able to make strides. So we've talked a little bit whenever we talked about the quarterback episode with Kyler Murray. Maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. can get put into more positions to be successful. Maybe that ultimately opens this offense up some more, but it's really just a question mark. I think the best thing that you get with James Conner, right, is he does have an every down skill set. He is a guy that we've seen through the years play on passing downs. We've seen him get the carries inside the 5-yard line. When you put those 2 things together, anytime you have a running back that can get those 2 elements, it gives you upside in fantasy football. And it's pretty straightforward. In PPR, half PPR, it's a cheat code because you get to catch those check down passes, and then you also want to be the guy scoring the touchdown. So I think Connor's shown multiple years that he can be that guy that can do both of those things. So I think that's really positive. I don't know. Trey Benson didn't do much last year, but he was only a rookie, Ian. He was also playing through some injuries and different things. Is he going to challenge him more? We kind of heard some comments at the combine where, the Cardinals out of one side of their mouth said, yeah, we think we have 2 running back ones. And then later in the comment, it was like, yeah, James Conner's our guy. So I don't know, ultimately what you do. It depends on where you cut in on that clip and how you wanted to position, I guess, if you're a reporter. But once I listened to the whole thing, I kind of came away going, I don't know. Kind of feels like the same thing as last year. So Conner will have to hold off the younger player, and he'll have to hold off age. But, man, I do feel like he's got the clearer path to, him being the running back 6 overall. It could happen. We could look up and be like, man, James Conner finished as the running back 6 this year. It's really in the range of outcomes. David Montgomery, for that to hit, in my opinion, it has to take an injury to Jahmyr Gibbs, right? But we knock on wood. We never want players to get injured. Jahmyr Gibbs, whatever. You say, Ian, wins the Powerball, decides he wants to take 3 games off of football. In those 3 games, David Montgomery is going to be ranked inside the top 12 running backs guaranteed. And he's almost, then he would even be a better bet than James Conner, right, to finish as the running back 6 on the season. So I think it's just 2 really different things. Montgomery, you're betting, okay, can he hold on to half this backfield? He's playing in one of the best offenses in the league. He's going to get his touchdowns. He's going to score his fantasy points. Conner, more upside because there is a case where he gets, all this work and the Cardinals offense comes around. But if we talk contingent upside, that's definitely on Montgomery's corner. So like you said, they're really close. They're running back 22 and 23 right now in ADP over an underdog draft. So they're going right there together. I do think they are both great targets. Like I said, if you start off without running backs early in your draft.
RB 15 and 16 respectively last season in PPR points per game. But I love that you brought out, again, Montgomery's contingent upside, because I feel like we only talk about that with Jahmyr Gibbs because it's fresh in our minds. He won a lot of people those fantasy championships. But go back to the rookie season. Gibbs missed a couple games with the injury. And man, in 2 games without Jahmyr Gibbs, we saw David Montgomery have 59 combined carries and targets, 270 total yards, and 4 touchdowns, racked up back-to-back top 5 overall finishes in those weeks. So yes, Jahmyr Gibbs would be the overall RB1 without D-Mont. We saw that. But you said top 12, Dwain. It honestly might be top 5 for Montgomery as well. That's how good that, again, Detroit Lions offensive environment really can be. So with Connor, yes, Trey Benson is there. And, I flow this around Twitter and I've seen the pushback, like they're going to get Benson more involved this year. And maybe they will. But I would just point out, man, this guy only racked up more than 5 touches in 4 games. And each one of those was decided by 20 plus points. So really didn't see any of it last year. Honestly, Amari DiMercato, a pass down specialist, kind of like in that Bills Ty Johnson role. I'm not worried about him threatening Trey Benson necessarily, but, not exactly making life easier for him. Having standalone value is enough of a thorn in the side to, again, limit what Benson's flex capabilities could be. Maybe this Cardinals offense could take a step forward, though. I mean, that would be the hope. A lot of, issues, I guess we could say, when we talk through Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray in the passing game, taking a step forward with Drew Petzing, because we didn't really see it last year. But I'll tell you what, Dwain, weeks 9 through 18 last year, just being a good offseason student here, right? I'm not, making a weird sample size. I'm just saying second half of the season, Cardinals had the number 1 rushing offense in the league in terms of EPA per carry, more so down to 17th in terms of EPA per dropback. So shout out Cowboys fans. Might be a reason for optimism because new offensive coordinator Clayton Adams was actually the Cardinals OC, but that would, I think, be the allure for Connor. It is someone who, again, has that 3-down capability, probably going to have more of a workhorse role, and is in an offense that, still figuring out how to throw the football, but really we're up there with the Ravens and Buccaneers and some of the more dynamic run games in the league over the second half of the season. So I think Connor versus Montgomery, I'm saying yes, Dwain. I think, honestly, it's good to have these guys in the middle rounds because 10 years ago, I think both of these guys are profiles of more of a round 3 back.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty, right, of it today is that you don't have to spend that round 3 pick. And I agree with you. I think whichever order you want to take them in doesn't really matter to me. But if you are just betting on more of like the median and the reasonable ceiling, I do think the slight edge goes to James Conner, just because I think when you and I look at it, we think that obviously there's much less risk to what's going to happen with his carries with what we have with Trey Benson versus David Montgomery having to deal with Jahmyr Gibbs.
So, guys, when you're going through running back rankings, you're just looking at ADP or preferably making tiers. Again, when we get to these guys, I think we can really talk through those scenarios with a good level of certainty, right? Once we get past Connor Montgomery, though, we kind of start losing that. Then we get into true zero RB territory where, we're looking at guys that are normally going to be priced outside the top 24 backs. For good reason. There's at least one, if not multiple, red flags. We're not so certain about what the workload's going to be. But hey, where there is risk and uncertainty, maybe there could be opportunity. So, Dwain, favorite zero RB target out of Vikings RB1 Aaron Jones, Bears RB1 DeAndre Swift, or Titans RB1 Tony Pollard?
This one for me was really close between Aaron Jones and DeAndre Swift. I kind of set Pollard aside, because I do feel like Kevin O'Connell, right? We have to give him respect. We know that he's going to pull some strings and we're going to feel good about the offense. It could take a step back with JJ McCarthy, but last year we thought it might do that with Sam Darnold and it didn't. Then I think with DeAndre Swift, getting Ben Johnson, right? You have the weapons of Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, just the upside potential for the offense. Now the Bears are a big question mark. They could also be a complete flop, right? They are one of the biggest boom bust bets of this season, regardless of which players you're talking about on the team. Obviously, it really starts with Kaleb. But if you think about it, for DeAndre Swift, if everything were to go right, given the fact that, man, this guy ran as pure as you could run, Ian, as far as who you added for offseason competition. We got Roshan Johnson still hanging around, who honestly in 2 years hasn't done much, Ian. He has not done a lot to really push whoever's been there for more of a workload. So why should we assume he's going to do that this year? I think he's a nice handcuff option right now in fantasy, but I'm not betting on him to take the work away from DeAndre Swift. It's certainly in the range of outcomes, but it's not like Roshan's been like this beast that's just waiting in the wings. Then if you look at what else they did, it's a round 7 pick. It really couldn't have gone better for DeAndre Swift. And I know all the rumors, hey, they really wanted Travion Henderson. They were ready to make that trade. But guys, guess what? It doesn't matter now. The pick turned into Luther Burden. That's who they ended up with. Maybe Luther Burden steals a few of these touches. So I do put Swift at the top, but I do wonder if I'm wrong. because Aaron Jones is a guy, despite the fact he's going to be 31, Ian, like over the last several years, even though he's starting to decline just a little bit, he's still better than DeAndre Swift at almost everything. Like, he's just a better running back right now than DeAndre Swift. And if the Vikings are really humming, then that's a really positive thing for him. The big challenge for him is they had Jordan Mason, right? And they made a trade to do that. Jordan Mason is a proven asset. He's played really well in San Francisco. We saw him do it last year. So I feel like there's just more competition for the touches. Like, I could see a scenario here where Jordan Mason suddenly gets 60% of the carries inside the 5. Right. And now we're talking about, oh, man, Aaron Jones is getting 45% of the rushing attempts. He's getting the passing downs, but he's not getting the stuff inside the 5. Like, there's just a wide range of outcomes here as far as like what the role could be for Aaron Jones. If you told, can I just have Aaron Jones play in Chicago? Like, if I could take that, like, Ian, then I would just like, I would be all over this. But I was a little torn. I did lean to DeAndre Swift over Aaron Jones slightly, but man, it's close because Aaron Jones is still the better player, even at an older age. I mean, DeAndre Swift's only going to be 26 when the season starts. Yeah. This dude's still really young, but Aaron Jones has still been the better player over the last couple of seasons.
And again, I feel like people have liked Swift in the past. I mean, during Detroit, it was kind of similar to free Aaron Jones. It was free DeAndre Swift because he always made good use of his opportunities. But because of Jamal Williams and they just, injuries also, they never fully featured Swift. But this guy still, since he entered the league in 2020, has never finished worse than the RB24 in PPR points per game. I know some of the advanced stats were bad, but you said it too, man. Roschon Johnson was the league's single worst RB in yards per carry last year, all right? It was a bad offense. Guess what? Swift had bad advanced numbers, but they really, when you start looking at some of these leaderboards, man, I feel like we don't always pin them against everyone the same way, okay? Like, Swift was right there with Devon Achane, bottom 7 rushers and rushing yards over expected per carry. Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams, DeAndre Swift, all bottom 10 running backs in yards after contact per carry, basically had the same missed tackles force rate than Joe Mixon. Guess what? Achane, Taylor, Kyron, Mixon all finished as top 10 running backs because they were getting a lot of volume and good offenses, exactly what we would expect from Swift in Chicago. So I know there's been rumors, again, about Nick Chubb maybe being added, but I just don't buy that first-year offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, one, had complete control of player personnel to just get rid of Swift in the first place, and two, okay, he wanted Jahmyr Gibbs over DeAndre Swift. I don't know if that's the most damning thing in the world because he's had this entire offseason to do something about it, and they just haven't. So you mentioned, again, presence of Jordan Mason really would make a lot of sense. I am so sorry, Vikings fans. You guys have had to watch Madison and then Aaron Jones just get stonewalled at the goal line over these past 2 years. So it's a situation where, again, just Aaron Jones or just Jordan Mason, I think we would gladly rank them ahead of DeAndre Swift. But when considering that, I am with you. I give Swift a slight edge. Let's talk about Pollard, though, for a second, because he did look better post-injury, man. Like we talked about, it had that unfortunate, broken ankle leg, basically. And then the Cowboys 49ers game comes in 2023. We're all hyped to draft him. Doesn't have the same efficiency. Last year, he got back up to top 6 status in rushing yards after contact per carry, despite having, one injury really after another down the stretch. The reason, and I'm guessing this is kind of your thoughts as well, the reason why I'm not all that, keen on just buying back into Pollard is because Tyjae Spears was really banged up throughout all of last season. And when we did see them both together, this was far more 50-50 than I think we're expecting things to be in Chicago or Minnesota, and an offense that probably won't be as good as either.
Yeah, when both players were healthy, to your point, and we didn't get a lot of those games last year, so the sample is small, it was much closer to 50-50. But the thing that we can pair with that is the coaches last season told us they saw them as interchangeable parts. It didn't play out that way, I think, mostly due to the injuries. But we've also now had confirmation this offseason that, yes, that is the way they wanted it to be, and they're now, that's the forecast for this year. They actually want to be able to do what they couldn't last year, and they want both of the guys to be healthy. So I think even though we have the small sample size of where they were really closer together, Ian, I think when you put it together with the coach speak from last season as well as this season, I think we should really trust what the Tennessee Titans are telling us. And that really makes Tyjae Spears the guy that we want to be targeting in this backfield. Not that we don't ever want Pollard, but he just goes so much further. Like, they should not be going this far apart. They're much more likely to finish, within, 30 fantasy points of each other than what we're giving it credit for right now in the ADP. If you had to choose, yeah, you're going to take Pollard over Spears. Spears, but they shouldn't be this far apart. So Spears is the guy that I've been targeting. Not that I'm completely out on Pollard, but yes, I'm with you. I'm more concerned that this is going to be a closer split backfield. And the one other component here is, like, I just worry about the offense. Like, I'm glad they got Cam Ward. Like, they've got hope for the future, but at the same time, like, again, going to the projections, what we have in the model today, the Titans are not one of these offenses that we really expect to be a juggernaut.
And the good thing, even though Pollard was, again, playing through some pain down the stretch, we still did see Spears basically get a chance to be the lead back, and that did produce snap rates north of 60%. So Brian Callahan obviously back in Tennessee. We know if something happens to Pollard, that Spears actually will be given, the sort of role to produce fancy fireworks. And, man, if you guys somehow trusted Spears during the fantasy playoffs last year, he was the RB5, Dwayne, weeks 15 through 17 out there. Only Gibbs, Taylor, Cook, and Bijan actually score more points. So Amir Abdullah was RB7. Okay, weird things happen in small sample sizes. I'm not sitting here saying we need to go with some Abdullah shares, but yeah, man, Tajay Spears. I would say, Dwayne, I like Tajay Spears this year as much as I like Bud Light, which is quite a lot.
Hey, you know you're not actually allowed to drink in a beer commercial?
Since when?
You gotta wait till it's done. Oh,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
Ian, keeping the producers on their toes with that. I like it. I like it. But it's time for the Bud Light Breakout Watch Running Back Edition. We've seen these rookies, Ian, this year going pretty high in drafts. We've got Ashton Genty. He's going in round 1, guys. Newsflash, if you're just now coming on board and starting to think about fantasy football, you have to spend a really high pick to get Ashton Genty. You want Amarian Hampton, the other first-round pick. He's going in round 4 right now in best ball drafts, probably in your home league, going to slide a little bit further than that, but still pretty pricey, Ian. The other one we have is R.J. Harvey landing in a spot in Denver where people are like, oh, my God, like this guy is going to take over this backfield. So good landing spot for Harvey. He's a hand-picked guy by Sean Payton, so he's also climbing the draft board up to round 5 right now on Underdog. But we've got another trio of guys here where there's a little more concern around what's going on with them, but these are part of still a really good rookie class. So really going to want to get your thoughts here. We've got Quinshon Judkins, we've got Kaleb Johnson, and we've got Travion Henderson. And again, got some offensive environment concerns here, but if you have to pick from one of these 3 players, which rookie are you putting your chip on?
I think I have to lean Judkins, and honestly, it's not too dissimilar from the conversation we just had on Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, and Tony Pollard, because I think Judkins is a little bit similar to Swift, where we actually have the best chance at taking over the backfield, being that 3-down workhorse. Don't want to completely write off Jerome Ford, and they obviously drafted Dylan Sampson in round 4 for a reason, but man, near round 1 draft capital with Judkins going again just at the very start of round 2. Saw him what he did at Ohio State. He's built to handle that big load, can also catch the ball. So Quinshon Judkins for me, best chance at getting over 300 touches, because Kaleb Johnson, the scheme fit is great, but we saw Arthur Smith divide things up between Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Okay, I do not think Jalen Warren is going to hit the wayside. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jalen Warren is the most productive back in Pittsburgh, just based on the boost that we get from catching the ball in fantasy football land. So again, a bit more concerned with Caleb's competition, a la Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Travion's the one that, as much as, you said earlier, Dwayne, like, what would we do if we were starting a team? Which one of these running backs would we prefer? I think it might very well be Travion Henderson, but the problem is I don't think Ramondre Stevenson's going anywhere. And as much as I like Drake May and I like the improvements the Patriots have made, they only have room to go up, all right? This was arguably the single worst offensive environment in the league last year, so improvement doesn't necessarily mean we're looking at a top 10 group. Could very well still be the worst out of these 3. So for me, it's Quinshon Judkins. What say you?
Yeah, so the projections would also agree with you. Quinshon easily of this group projects for the most, right? And he just has the clearest path to get there. We have the questions, like we mentioned, around the offense. I think if Joe Flacco's under center, as long as that's occurring, Ian, like this can be a functional offense. I do think they're going to run the ball more, right? I think they're going to run it more. Now, we'll see what happens. Like, how long do they keep Flacco under center? Probably comes down to how the win-loss total is looking, and then we're probably going to get a look at one of these later round quarterbacks in Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders. And who knows? Maybe one of these guys can shine. Like, I would lean towards Shedeur. I mean, I get it. I know he fell in the draft. I'm not going to rehash all of that, Ian, but I still think he was better than what his draft capital said. Like, how do you go from being a guy that could be a round one guy to falling as far as he did? I don't know. But anyway, moving forward, the guy, though, that I would put my chip on here, like as far as like what I think about ceiling outcomes, it is Travion. I agree with you. I don't think that Ramondre Stevenson is just like going to fall off the face of the earth, but I think there is a scenario where Travion gets to 55% of the snaps. And in that scenario, who does he turn into? Achane. He turns into Bucky Irving. Those guys have shown us that you don't have to be a 70% player in the snap department to really put up these electric numbers. And I think of the profiles we have here, Travion's the most like those guys, right? He can hit the home runs. He's also the guy probably most likely to get worked into the passing game. Now, he does not have the same chops that those other two guys actually showed in college. They were a little bit ahead of where he is. But, if you guys have turned on the film and, watched it, Travion, you get him into space, man. Good things happen. Like, talk about a guy that just takes away angles, not just from linebackers. He takes away angles from cornerbacks, safeties, other guys that should really be able to track him down. He does a good job with that. So I would lean towards Travion. The last part here really is Drake May. I feel like it gives us the best hope of a revival for one of these offenses. As much as like Joe Flacco could babysit and Cleveland's offense would probably be good, we still don't know who's going to be the quarterback for the Steelers. Probably still going to be Aaron Rodgers. But right now, Drake May is the guy that was an early round one pick last year heading into his second year. I know we're not crazy about all their other weapons, Ian, but I would lean to Travion Henderson being my bet. But again, the projections do agree with you. They like Quinshon Judkins. So that was our Bud Light Breakdown Watch running back edition, folks. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Okay, fantasy football fans, sure, the NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it. And all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change, and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
As always, I invite you guys to check out our full rankings at fantasylife.com. Dwayne's even sick enough to have some week one goodness up there if you're trying to get that far ahead. But as we transition outside of the RB2 ranks into RB3 territory, these are guys that are, again, priced this low for a reason. But you do come across some situations where it's like, love bringing this out, Dwayne. It's like, hey, I draft this guy as an RB3, but once we get to week one, could we be ranking them significantly higher? And I do think that Chiefs probable RB1 Isaiah Pacheco fits that bill. We're talking about a guy that, man, is just 1 year removed from finishing as the RB14 in PPR points per game in 2023. Unfortunately, with the early season fibula fracture last year, was not able to replicate that success. So thoughts on Pacheco being available again at an RB3 price tag, despite having what could be one of the more fantasy-friendly roles in the league.
Yeah, I think we're drafting Isaiah Pacheco at his floor right now. Like, if Isaiah Pacheco finishes lower than a running back 3 status, like, I will be completely surprised. So that's the beauty of where Pacheco is going right now. You're buying his floor, but there's absolutely ceiling from here, Ian. So, like, if we go back to last year, and again, it's a small sample, but they were about to give this dude the rock. He was averaging over the first 2 games before the injury, 15.9 points per game. He had an 8.6 utilization score. Guys, the utilization score is on a scale from 0 to 10, and it looks at all the different things that a running back can be doing, right? Are they getting the carries? Are they getting the carries inside the 5? Are they getting snaps in the 2-minute offense? Are they on the field and long down and distance? All these different things that we know ultimately matter for fantasy points, and the best score you can get is a 10. He was at an 8.6, and that's in the range of a typical low-end running back 1. And if we just want to talk some of the more traditional stats in those games, 74% snap share, dude. I should just stop there, right? 74% of the snaps is absolutely insane. And if you go back to 2023, once he took over the starting role, which was in week 4, very similar. 15.4 fantasy points per game, had an 8.2 utilization score over a much bigger sample size, 68% of the snaps. So I think very clearly they were going to go right back to Pacheco and maybe even give him a little bit bigger role than what he had the year before. Now, He's had the injury. Obviously, when he came back, he was not the same player. He never really did reclaim that role last year. But I think you got to look at that, Ian, and say it was due to the injury. Of course, it creates a little bit more doubt, with folks, because they do wonder, okay, great. Well, now maybe the Chiefs think, well, we can't load up Pacheco because he might get hurt and we'll be back in the same. And we don't know for sure. Like, that's obviously a very plausible thing that could happen. We can't predict how coaches are going to think about these things. But man, Ian, when I look at the backfield moves this offseason, again, you're bringing back Kareem Hunt. And look, he did yeoman's work. He did some nice things for him last year. But let's be honest, he's a below average running back at this point in his career. Below average to bad, okay? And then if we look at what else they did, Elijah Mitchell, he's a guy that's been really explosive over his career, but not someone that a team is really, and it was the 49ers, they never really trusted him with a huge workload. And when they did, he often battled injuries. And then if we look at the draft, they waited for Brashard Smith. It's not like they took a high running back in the draft. So Pacheco's another one of these guys that, man, he ran really pure this offseason, and I threw this out on Twitter, and I did have some people come back, what if Elijah Mitchell's good? He could be. Elijah Mitchell could be good, but are we really placing this big chip on Elijah Mitchell that we think that he's really going to be the reason that we should be letting Isaiah Pacheco honestly fall into the 30s of running backs? He should probably be going right there, borderline running back 2, Ian. You could even say low end running back 2 is probably where Pacheco should be going. He's going too far. He's going too far below that in draft. So I think he's one of my favorite picks right now on the board, especially if you started off with heavy wide receiver and maybe you waited to grab your running back 2 until round 6. Maybe it was one of those rookies, and then you can come back and you can add Pacheco as your running back 3. I really like that.
And the spot he's going right now, specifically over at Underdog, shout out. I mean, it's right after some tier breaks at the other positions as well. Top 48 wide receivers are off the board. I still like a few guys, in that next tier. We have Josh Downs. If you're into, Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka, okay, fine. But generally, guess what? When I get to this point, I already kind of have my 5 wide receivers, so I'm good. Top 5 tight ends are off the board. And after TJ Hawkinson, we can talk about should be Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, Travis Kelce, a lot of different options. And then also top 6 quarterbacks. And as we talked about in our quarterback episode, man, really does seem like you could arguably put the guy that you have QB7, right there with the guy you have QB15. So again, this is the spot in the draft. I think Brian Robinson's another guy I've made a habit of drafting in the similar area, where the reason why these guys are priced in this RB3 tier is because we have that uncertainty about, again, what their workload is going to be. But I don't think we should be shying away from that. We should be buying into it, because when you look at these guys in that group, man, not saying Emeka Egbuka couldn't have a nice season and maybe surprise, but again, Pacheco is literally just a little bit more clarity around the depth chart away from being what? 3rd or 4th round pick. I mean, this is a nice situation. I understand the guy runs he's mad at the ground every single time. I don't think he's the world's best talent out there or anything, but you mentioned it. Very, very little additions made. And arguably the loss of Samaje Perine could be the biggest deal of them all, because Pacheco is someone with 50 plus reception upside out there. And man, if we would have gotten, again, just a free, clear season from Chiefs RBs last year, Pacheco probably would have finished as a borderline RB1. And at this price, man, why not go find out if he can do it in 2025?
Yeah, and he was a round 2 pick at this time last season. Pacheco was a late round 2 pick in fantasy. Obviously, if you took him, you got hurt because of the injuries. But I'm with you. It was about to happen. So worst case, had Pacheco been healthy all season, maybe he didn't show the ceiling some had hoped for, right? He doesn't score 22 fantasy points per game, but he ends up more around that 15.5 to 16.5, low end running back 1 territory. Then you probably have some people saying, yeah, that's not that great. And they might kind of put him more in the Kyron Williams bucket, who falls into round 3. But really, how much lower do we think Pacheco would be going? He'd probably be a late round 3 to round 4 pick. And now, where you're getting him is way later than that. I think the furthest he would fall would be into that same area where we just talked about with James Conner and David Montgomery. And I don't think he would fall that far. I think he would be going ahead of those guys. So the Chiefs did not make enough moves this offseason in their backfield to make me think that they're really just going to, revert away from this and just ultimately decide, no, we're just going to give 40% of the work to Pacheco. I want to go ahead and bet on the fact that I think he's going to be 55, 60% plus of the workload.
And again, most people do seem to be coming around to that. There's a reason why Pacheco is available in this range and no other Chiefs running backs are going until the very end of drafts. However, same cannot be said for three very muddled backfields. We're talking about the Cowboys, the Giants, and yes, the Jaguars as well. It's a situation where, again, we think we might have a leader. Javonte Williams seems to be a leader in the clubhouse in Dallas. Probably Travis Etienne in Jacksonville. Recording this on Tuesday, though, wasn't at practice today. That's curious. And then obviously with the Giants, it's between Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scatterbo. So again, Dwain, where there's uncertainty in fantasy, there's also opportunity. Out of these three backfields, what running back have you made the biggest habit of drafting?
It's been Jaden Blue so far. Now, again, a lot of this comes down to price, but I've got 28%. Like of my 21 underdog drafts that I've done so far, I've drafted Jaden Blue on 28% of them. That's my third most drafted running back, but it's a 132 ADP. So he's cleared all of the other things, right? You're now into that range where, let's say you started off with, 4 wide receivers and 1 running back, right, in your first 5 rounds. And then you had to come back, right, and tack on your 0 running backs or your hero running back targets. You had to go ahead and grab your quarterback that you stacked. You're now clear of all that, right? Once you get into this range of like 130, you've made most of those picks, and you can now go back and focus on a potential weakness of your team. Bashal Tutin is actually second for me. And out of, the Jaguars would be second in this scenario we're talking about. I've drafted him 17% of the time. The other nice thing is that he's falling, because I don't know if you heard this, Ian, but in a drill, he fumbled the ball. Oh. And so because he also fumbled in college and now he fumbled the ball in this drill, we should now assume that Bajal Tutin is going to fumble the ball 1 out of every 5 carries for his NFL career. And that's the new projection for him. So I've been buying more and more of Tutin because his price is actually falling. The supermodel really did like him, right? The other guy here, supermodel, also loved Cam Scatterbo. I just have the least of him in, but again, it comes back to price. He's going at pick 99. You talked about earlier the tier break with where you're getting into Pacheco. My challenge with Scatterbo is I haven't been taking the early round quarterbacks as much. If I do, he gets back into my range here, but he's typically in a spot where it's like I'm looking at the dual threat quarterbacks of Kyler, and again, not the elite dual threats guys, but the next tier down, Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, Kaleb Williams. We've talked about his ceiling. Also, if you're needing a last shot at wide receiver upside for guys that have a very reasonable shot at playing time that are young, Emeka Egbuka goes in this range. He's a round 1 NFL draft pick. Luther Burden, a round 2 NFL draft pick. Jaden Higgins, probably the starter on the outside, for the Texans from day 1. Another round 2 NFL draft pick. Trey Harris also going in that range. So Scatterbo goes in the supermodel really likes him. One of the most productive running backs that we've seen in college over the last 8 years, scores really highly there. But when you put him up against all these other things that by the time I get to that spot in my draft, I just don't get to click on his name as much. I like Scatterbo, period, over Jaden Blue, hands down. But Jaden Blue, man, once I get past all of that other stuff, I've grabbed the quarterback I want. I've grabbed that other last receiver that I wanted to get before I get to, my late round receivers. And so it's just really more of a battle of where he goes. So I feel like the uncertainty, to your point, is kind of similar across all of these teams. But Scatterbo is the one that's the most priced up. And it's just, it's just a challenge because the other things I typically need at that point in the draft.
And Tyrone Tracy, he had some stretches last year where he looked pretty darn good out there, okay? Yeah. Ball security, job security needs to improve in that department. Only Breece Hall actually had more combined drops and fumbles last year. But I'm with you, man. Just between Scatterbo and Tracy right now, I would be a little bit more willing to put that chip on Tracy or at least maybe look elsewhere at that spot. Why is there no love for Tank Bigsby, though? Because, again, had one of the worst rookie seasons of any running back, but came back last year, man. And all these advanced stats that we like to use to hype up other running backs, we just kind of leave it with Bigsby. So, no, doesn't maybe have the same speed score as what Tutin's going. And, yes, I understand Travis Etienne was a first-round draft pick from the Urban Meyer administration back in the day. But, again, just based on last year, Tank Bigsby was the best running back in Jacksonville. Who's to say he couldn't do that again?
Yeah, I like Bigsby as well. He's a guy that I do draft. The guy, honestly, I draft the least is ETN, but now his ADP is starting to fall enough to where it's like, okay, they're all pretty close. You should probably be betting on them equally. I honestly have the backfield projected almost even, 33, okay. 33, 33, because I think this truly is one of those scenarios where we don't know. And hopefully we're going to be able to read the tea leaves and learn more about it, through training camp and things like that. Or they could just really lean into this rotation. I know on one hand, you're like, well, James Gladstone comes in. We've got Liam Cohen. Their draft pick is Bajal Tootin, but it's a round 4 pick, guys. Like, it's not like they took the guy in round 2 or something. That would definitely change things. So I think this one's really wide open, but I do agree with you. Tank Bigsby, man, was a really good player last year. Pretty much a 0 in the pass game. That hurts him. But if we look at him as the guy, if I had to make a bet today, like who gets the carries inside the 5 in week 1, I would say it's probably Tank Bigsby. If I had to make a bet who's going to be on the field and passing downs in week 1, my bet is probably Travis Etienne. If I had to make a bet on who's the guy that's kind of filling in, doing all the other stuff, it's probably Bajal Tootin in week 1. So it's really hard to say how they're going to go, but I think it's a good point from you. I do think Tank Bigsby, especially due to the ADP, he goes later than the other two, is another guy that I do like taking on Jacksonville.
So again, guys, those backfields, basically the latest you can go and reasonably have a chance to get a running back who's going to be starting for their team in week 1 and leading that backfield. After that, though, usually we do still need to round out, our last few depth spots and accordingly get some RB4 plus types who, again, we are not drafting to necessarily be ready to go in week 1, but maybe they're just one injury away from being on the cover of waiver wire articles and someone that we can instantly lock into the lineup. So Dwain, RB4 plus types, who have you made a habit of drafting the most so far?
Well, look, I like mixing these up. Like, there's a lot of names that we could talk about here, but so far, the way I treat a lot of this is the guys that I think that are going too late right now in drafts that could move up, right? And so Ian and I are sickos. We're probably going to draft 400 fantasy teams this year, right? And we look at it as part of our job for you guys to actually have some money on the line, skin in the game, actually have to be thinking through these things. We actually want to put our money where our mouth is. But right now, these guys are just going too late. Ian, Jalen Wright, I've got on 30% of my teams. He's my most drafted running back. I think it's kind of funny how this guy from winning. He went from being a around 11 or 12 pick, right, last year in drafts to now, because they add Ollie Gordon in the 5th round, you're suddenly telling me that he should be closer to pick 175. Round 6 in the NFL draft. So love him. Pick 175. For those of you just doing quick math in your head at home, that's round 15 right now in drafts. And then my other guy, my second most drafted back, is Woody Marks, 25%. His ADP is 207. So that's round 18 right now. So a literal last round dart throw, guys. You just look at the backfield right now for the Houston Texans. I can't explain why the Houston Texans spent the draft pick they did on Woody Marks. They might have been the only team in the NFL that actually would have spent that draft capital on him. But the bottom line is they did do it, Ian. We've got Dare Ogunbowale. He's really just been more of a placeholder in the passing game. And then we've got the fact that Dameon Pierce really fell out of favor last year. So I think there's this scenario where Woody Marks actually really is the guy that takes over passing downs, or at least part of them, right away. And then he's the guy that is ultimately the handcuff to Joe Mixon, who's an older guy in an offense that we really could like. Can I guarantee this? No. But looking at where they took him and looking at the other backs on the roster, I feel really good. And I feel like Marks is really a guy that probably should be going around pick like 175, 180. And right now he's picked 207. So 25% of my teams have him. Ian, what are your names?
We're spot on. I have Jalen Wright right now. I kid you not. 50% exposure. That's irresponsible.
Oh, wow, nice.
Okay. Don't go that high. Like, don't do it. I should probably chill out a little bit, but I can't stop doing it, man. I want to do it even more. Again, for all the reasons that Dwain just echoed. Even if Ollie Gordon is more so going to be, again, that early down back, which I think is far from a given. You're telling me that Jalen Wright, Devon Achance handcuff is available that late? Yeah, I'm buying. Marshawn Lloyd, someone who, again, ran very hot this offseason in terms of the Packers not adding anyone else. Now, Emmanuel Wilson wasn't bad, but we're talking about someone you can get literally in the final 2 rounds of drafts. So Marshawn Lloyd has that explosive pass catching ability under Matt LaFleur, who, if you do go back and look at his whole career, hasn't always featured his RB1 like Josh Jacobs as heavily as he did last year. And then finally, Ray Davis, a little bit more expensive than these guys. But if you are in a draft, you're not landing James Cook, you do think something could be going on there. Bills really declined to add any other real, additions to their backfield. And Ray Davis, as we saw in that one game against the Jets, really is going to be leaned on as the workhorse anytime James Cook is unable to get out there. So those are the guys I've been drafting. Also, Austin Eckler to an extent as well. We've talked about him a little bit. Last name I will get your opinion on, though, Dwain, is someone that Peter Overzet actually turned me on to. Make sure you're subscribing to Fantasy Life newsletter so you can find this out for yourself as well. But Will Shipley for the Eagles, someone that we were both pretty high on coming out. Kenneth Gainwell took his talents to Pittsburgh this offseason. Yes, Philly added A.J. Dillon, but there's been some pretty good reports so far about Shipley being that clear-cut RB2. God forbid did, the curse of 400 touches, whatever propaganda, anti-RB nerds want to throw out there at us happens, do you think Will Shipley is someone that, again, maybe we're looking back on September saying, man, should have drafted him more?
Yeah, Shipley's another name that I have been taking, not quite as much as the other guys. Like I think he's moved up now, like, Pete, the market mover. I think we're talking about a running back going like the 180s now, as far as draft pick goes. Pete. So he's more of a, shut up, Pete, more of a round 15 guy. But I do think that's where he should be going. Now, they did add AJ Dillon, so it could be more of a split backfield. But again, like AJ Dillon, at this point, I think we kind of know he's not good. Like, he's had enough chances to really do something in his career. It's not like the guy never got touches. Like, he definitely got his opportunity to show more, and he just never did with those touches he was given early in his career in Green Bay. So if I had to pick a guy that I think has the 3-down skill set to come in and take over for Barkley, it would be Shipley. Probably turns into some sort of a combo of those two players with Shipley leading the way. So I do like the shout out from Pete. Obviously we love that offensive line, and the ceiling just for the Eagles offense is sky high.
Gotta love our fantasy industry where it's like, you hear something good, and it's like, that's great. I'm not going to tell anyone now because I only want to be the one person that has this information. So appreciate you, Pete, and appreciate you listening to us right now on the Fantasy Life Show. Like, subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. And otherwise, just have a great rest of your day. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.